Very common these days to see the Auslan interpreters at media conferences about emergencies, as we've seen in recent times with coronavirus updates. And it emerged on Friday, and I found this quite intriguing, before the Premier's media conference started, that there is no Auslan symbol for coronavirus. Well, it is a novel coronavirus, I suppose, so maybe I shouldn't be so surprised. Judd is the chairperson of the Australian Sign Language Interpreters Association, kind enough to join us this morning. Julie, hello to you.
Hello, good morning.
No Auslan sign for coronavirus. Is that unusual?
No, not at all. Auslan is a different language to English, and so we need to represent English terms in a way that we present each letter of the word. So we have what's called finger spelling. So there are symbols, if you like, or signs that represent each English letter of the alphabet, and we finger spell nouns, particularly names of places, when there's not a sign for them because there's no direct equivalent in Auslan.
What challenges does that present for an interpreter during a media conference? And let's face it, us Australians do speak rather quickly sometimes.
Sure. If it's a long word, such as coronavirus, sometimes we will shorten that. We'll introduce it as the concept. So it's a disease. So we would use the sign for illness or disease, and then that would be prefaced, and then we would finger spell and say that it's called coronavirus and finger spell coronavirus. So Auslan is a visual language, not an auditory language, so it's not sequential. You don't have words one after the other. It's multi-channeled, so you have facial expression, body leans, a whole raft of grammatical features that we are expressing at the same time. So sometimes that can be quite convenient. So we can show expressions on our faces for different affect, and we use the 3D space in front of us to convey information. So it works very differently to a spoken language.
Julie Judd's the chairperson of the Australian Sign Language Interpreters Association. With me, Matt Webber on ABC Gold Coast. Julie, I'm curious about the facial expression element specifically. It can be rather subtle sometimes too. I mean, things as simple as a raised eyebrow, one or two, or Can you talk us through some of that?
Sure. Well, we have in the language what we call non-manual features, and that can include things on the face, such as your lips pouting. You can squint your eyes to indicate something very small. You can, for example, that is, you might use that feature for other things. A raised eyebrow might indicate it's a question or the unknown, to go with the sign that you're producing. That's a few examples. Also, body leans are important. So leaning forward, leaning back can indicate different meaning.
Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
Yes, it's very complex, and people think sometimes that it's just English on the hands, if you like.
But far from,
it actually is not, yes.
How long does it take to become a proficient Auslan interpreter?
Well, that's a question. I could say how long's a piece of string. It will depend on your, attributes. And some people are very good with visual languages and are very coordinated using their body, hands and face. And, some people are just naturally very gifted in being able to express themselves that way and have good memory skills and can take on the language and the grammar because it doesn't follow English word order. And so, some people learn Auslan by being immersed in the deaf community, and my belief is that's a wonderful way to learn a language, being immersed in it, and then might do some formal training of the language and then go through and study to become an interpreter, because that's a different skill in itself.
Julie, is it standard practice now for Auslan interpreters to be at all emergency media briefings? We've seen across the various bushfire crises and now in relation to the coronavirus outbreak, consistent presence, but is that standard practice?
It's becoming standard practice because we in Australia want to ensure that deaf people, along with everybody else, have access to important information. Deaf people are citizens just like any other individual. They can't access English in the same way that people who are not deaf can. A lot of deaf people are bilingual, but many are not and prefer to get the information in a clear, concise manner in their language. And that's a visual language, which is Auslan for most deaf people. We have Aboriginal communities that use different language systems, but I'm talking mainly about Auslan users here. And basically, it's very important. And so most of our governmental agencies are seeing that is important and now are setting up memorandum of understanding with agencies who provide sign language interpreters, and it's part of their tick box of ensuring that that's what's needed for a press conference. But we're not seeing that as much with the federal government and Scott Morrison, which is a little bit disappointing.
You'd like a little more. There's always more for a little more cooperation.
Sure, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah. Fascinating. Julie, really appreciate your time today. Thank